Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to talk about cell phone reduction using a group contingency in graduate level students. This presentation is by myself, Jaime-Lynn, and my fellow classmates, Fernanda, Sharon, and Emma. So the purpose of this study, Replication, we wanted to look at the effects of intergroup contingencies on cell phone use. What's a group contingency, you ask? Group contingencies are where all of the members of a group must meet a certain criteria in order for anyone in the group to earn the reward. Many classrooms use things like this. An example would be, say, a teacher wants everyone to do their homework. So she tells the class, if every single person does their homework this week, then on Friday, we can have a pizza party. Unfortunately, if little Timmy decides not to do his homework on Tuesday and he comes in, he has already ruined it for the entire class. It is a group contingency, an all or nothing. Everyone has to meet this certain level of whatever behavior you want in order to get the reinforcement. We chose this study because we all agreed that we could benefit from decreasing our own phone usage. Cell phones are distracting. They're distracting at work, they're distracting at school, and we all agreed that we found ourselves stuck on our phones when we could be doing a lot of other healthier alternative activities. So that's why we chose this study. Next, we're going to talk about what the original study looked like.
All right, everyone. So the original study was conducted in 2019 by Jones and their colleagues. And the study consisted of 6 individuals who attended a public high school in the southeast region of the United States. Their age range was between 14 and 18 years old. 3 students were female and 3 students were males. And they were from various ethnic backgrounds. I think there was Caucasians and African Americans, and 2 of them had 504 planned, and then 1 of them did have an IEP in place. The original study did use an ABA reversal design, and then it was conducted in the same classroom. It was an elective class. More specifically, it was a photography class, and it was 3 times a week. Before they implemented the study, there was no previous cell phone policy present in the classroom. And then let's see. And then again, the whole session duration was 90 minutes for every session that was conducted. And they were measuring the class phone usage, and they focused on one particular individual. And this individual was Veronica. And their operational definition of phone usage was any instance in which Veronica or another participant touched or swiped their screen to activate it, any type of manipulation, which in this case would be texting, or looking at or continuing to manipulate the screen. And the teacher and a second observer used paper and pen to collect the data, and they had the students' initials, and next to it there was empty boxes, and it was marked as either a plus that represented cell phone usage or 0, which meant did not use phone. And let's see. And then on our continuing to the other slide of the second slide, the purpose was to test the effects of using an interdependent group contingency to reduce cell phone use. Let's see. They calculated IOA again for only Veronica, and then they did this by using total duration for the class, and then they used a a total duration for the class, and they used a duration over occurrence for Veronica's specific data collection. And what's interesting is that Veronica's base mean was 21 minutes before the intervention was in place. And after the first intervention was put in place, her mean dropped down to 0.95 minutes. So there was an immediate decrease in her data or her cell phone usage. And then once that intervention was removed, her baseline to mean actually increased to 39.2 minutes. So it was a big jump from 21 minutes. And then when the intervention was put back into place, it immediately decreased to 0.06 minutes. So again, it was a huge, huge decrease. And overall for the whole class, it went down from 88% to 16% with this group contingency. And so the study suggests that this group contingencies do have an effect on reducing cell phone usage. And we're going to talk about is the participants and settings in our replication.
Participants and setting in replication. In the replication of this study, the participants included 4 female graduate students between the ages of 24 and 73 years old. Each participant was enrolled in asynchronous online graduate level courses through Ball State University. There were no previous relationships between any of the participants in the study, and the participants lived in various states in the United States. We all came from different backgrounds, and while the setting in the original study was in a classroom, our online course did not give us the opportunity to replicate the study in a classroom. So instead, we collected our own data in our own homes. Next, I will be reviewing the materials. Materials needed for this replication included cell phones, study materials pertaining to our shared class, SPCE 611, including but not limited to laptops and textbooks, a timer, and an app that tracked frequency of phone pickups. The phone and app allowed the participant to track our own data while studying. The timer was needed so that we could break down the sessions into 30 minutes accurately. The study materials were imperative to the study as the participants focused on phone usage while studying. We had 2 users have an iPhone who used the app Realized, while the 2 participants who had an Android phone used the app Touch Counter. Unfortunately, there was not a singular app that was supported by both phone types. Next, we will be discussing the study design and procedures.
So for our study, we again used the ABAB reversal design, just like the original study. And because we were reducing cell phone use while we're studying, we had to operationalize the use of cell phone. And so we said it was using 2 hands to manipulate the phone or text, touching or swiping the phone so that you could unlock it, and then continuing to manipulate the screen or just looking at information on the screen. And so we conducted 5 sessions for each of the phases. So we had baseline 1, intervention 1, baseline 2, and intervention 2. And we had 5 sessions in each of the phases because our data stayed pretty stable through the 5 phases. When we were in baseline, the sessions consisted of 30 minutes, and the phone use app tracked how many times we picked up, touched the phone, tapped the phone. And while this each of us were engaged in that 30-minute study session, we were using an app on our phones to track the pickups. During the intervention phase, at the beginning of the week, we wanted to remind all of the participants, all of us, that we were working towards the group contingency, which was earning Starbucks. And so at the beginning of the intervention phase, we let each other know, please don't use your cell phone. We all want to earn this group contingency. And then at the end of the intervention phase, we let everyone know, did we make it or not? And we'll discuss our results later on. For our iPhone users, as Emma indicated, they used Realized. And so with that app, during each phase, they had to take screenshots both before they started the 30-minute session and then after they finished the 30-minute session, they took another screenshot. For Jamie and I, we were Android users, and so we would begin our phase with setting the touch counter app on our phone, hitting reset to 0. And then after we completed the 30 minutes of studying, we hit the button on the touch counter. It gave us how many touches or taps we had during that 30-minute session. And then we took screenshots and sent that to our second observer. Now we're going to talk about the IOA data. So for IOA data, we collected 30% of our sessions. So we had a total of 20 sessions, and 30% of the 20 sessions was 6 sessions. And so what on the screen you see a Excel spreadsheet for Jaime-Lynn and I. And so we were partners because we both had the Android phones. And so Jamie sent screenshots to me through text for session 1, 7, 9, 14, 17, and 18. Then when I received the screenshots, I recorded on the Excel spreadsheet the number she sent me. And so they matched her numbers, 1400, 1600. So for that, for Jaime-Lynn's, we had 100% agreement. And then Jaime-Lynn did the same thing for me. I sent her screenshots of session 1, 5, 6, 15, 18, and 19. And she looked at my text and then she recorded what I sent her. So the method we use sending screenshots, unless you made a mistake entering the data from your text message to the Excel spreadsheet, you're going to come up with 100% agreement. So our formula for IOA was smaller frequency count divided by larger frequency count if they would have been different. But they weren't in our case, times 100. And so we had 100% agreement with the IOA data. And then Fernanda and Emma did the same thing with their cell phones and screenshots and recorded their information in the Excel spreadsheet as well. Next, we're going to talk about treatment integrity.
All right, y'all. So for our treatment integrity, we used a checklist on Excel. This Excel sheet was shared with all 4 members, and this checklist was seen at the beginning of the first session for the intervention phase, and it served as a visual reminder of what steps needed to be followed, and each participant would go ahead and check the corresponding box on every step if they completed it correctly for each session. And as you can see on the screen, our session 5 and our session 10, although you can't see it, it was cut off. Those represent our last sessions for each intervention phase. So in this case, the session 5 would represent session 10 in our intervention phase, and then session 10 on this data sheet would represent session 20 in our actual replication study, and we checked whether or not the participants got their reinforcer or not at the end of the week. And again, this was reviewed at the very beginning of each session during the intervention phase. And we actually used a formula to calculate our treatment integrity. And as you can see, it's the number of steps performed correctly. So numbers 1 through 7 over the total number of intervention steps, or however many you completed over, 7. And then you multiply it times 100. And we found that it was 100% across everyone. So all of us, Sharon, Jaime-Lynn, Emma, and I. Next, we will talk about our results.
The results in the replication study were similar to the results found in the original study. The interdependent group contingency reduced cell phone usage during time spent studying. Each of our last 5 intervention sessions were consistently at 0 phone pickups during each 30-minute study session. Thus, there was a clear functional relationship between the dependent variable, cell phone usage, and the independent variable, the group contingency that allowed us to earn our Starbucks for the week. Next, Jaime-Lynn will present her data collection and graph.
All right, here is my graph. So we see that I had a baseline. My first baseline average was 15.2, and I ranged from 14 to 16 instances within that first baseline phase. When we added our first intervention phase and put in that group contingency, I had a mean of 0 with a range of 0 to 0. I really wanted that Starbucks. Our second baseline phase, I went and I jumped to 15 with a range of 14 to 16, which is really about the same as my first baseline. But then that second intervention, we put that group contingency back in there, and my data dropped back down to 0 because I wanted Starbucks and I wanted my group to be able to earn Starbucks. So I think that we see here that there's a clear functional relation between our intervention there. We see baseline 1 is way up in the air. We have a lot more frequency there. And then we have our interventions that are way down at 0. So there's a clear functional relation between our independent and dependent variable. And then after my results, we have Emma's. I'm sorry, Fernanda's.
Just kidding. So this is my data. As y'all can see, during my first baseline, my average was 10 with a range of 8 to 12. So it's kind of similar, kind of close to Jaime-Lynn's, a little bit lower, but still in that little region. And after the intervention was placed, I did not get a Starbucks. As y'all can see, I had an average of 1 and a range of 0 to 2. So I kind of ruined it for everybody. But in the, back to baseline, you can see that my data really skyrocketed because the average was 30 instances, very, very busy week. And then I had a range of 19 to 42 instances. It was really, I think it almost doubled. But yeah, so it was a lot higher. And then after that, second intervention, or the second phase of the intervention, was placed, I had an average of 0 and a range of 0 to 0. So, I really wanted that Starbucks, and I was like, all right, I can't let them down. So, it stayed at 0. And again, during my first baseline, it's kind of, up there, but not, super high. And then my first intervention phase, it still went down quite a bit, but not enough to, get us the Starbucks. And then the second baseline, it's really, really up there. And you can see that there's kind of an increasing trend in the data. And then in the second one, it's at 0. So that it stayed at 0 again. And I mean, you can see that there's a clear functional relationship as there's an immediate drop in the behavior. So in this case, the phone pickups. And let's see. Then we're going to talk about, I think it is Emma's results.
So my first baseline had a mean of 10.2 pickups with a range of 8 to 12 phone pickups during the sessions. But you can see that during the first intervention phase, my mean was 0 pickups with a range of 0 to 0 phone pickups. When the baseline was reintroduced, I had a mean of 11 pickups with a range of 10 to 12 pickups during a session. And then when the return to intervention was introduced, I showed a mean of 0 pickups with a range of 0 to 0 pickups. As shown in the graph, you can see that I had a clear functional relationship between the baseline and intervention phases, which indicated that the group contingency mitigated any of my personal cell phone usage. Next, Sharon will present her data collection and graph.
Okay, so for my baseline, the first baseline, I had a range of 12 to 13, so that average or came to a mean of 12.6. And again, I was very motivated in the intervention phase, not to touch even my cell phone, because I really like Starbucks and I really like coffee. And so I was highly motivated. Plus, I really didn't want the rest of the group members to be at a loss because of something I did. So I worked really hard during that intervention phase. After the intervention phase, which was at 0, we went back to our second baseline phase. And my mean was pretty similar to baseline 1, 11.4 with a range of 11 to 12. And again, when we entered that second intervention phase, even though, and we weren't upset with Fernanda, we didn't make it the first time as a group, because we really worked on this as a group. We made it the second time. And so my intervention phase there was 0, and we all received our Starbucks during the second intervention phase. So way to go, everybody. You know, that was worth it. And let's see, next, I think we have a table to present.
We do. We have table 1. So here is the averages and the ranges of our cell phone usage for all of us across all of our phases. So we have our baseline 1, intervention 1, baseline 2, intervention 2. As a whole group, our baseline average for the first one was 12 with a range of 8 to 6. Our second baseline average 16.8 and ranged 10 to 42, which I would like to note is much higher than our first baseline. In the original study, they actually saw similar results. Veronica in that first baseline, I mean, she was up there, but the second baseline after intervention was a lot higher that second go round. And it looks like we got the exact same trend in data. And then for our interventions, our first average was 0.25. We had a couple in that first one, and we ranged from 0 to 2, but we really brought it home in intervention 2, and we had zeros across the board. So average of 0, range to 0 and 0. That's what we like to see. That's when we got our reinforcement, and we were happy gals with our Starbucks on Friday. So next we are going to look at our conclusion. So our results showed clear indication that group contingencies do result in a decrease in cell phones across all of us. Our graph show an immediate change in behavior upon implementing our intervention. And we see that without the intervention, our cell phone usage goes right back up to baseline or higher. So we see that the study that we aimed to replicate had very similar results, like I highlighted in our last slide talking about our table. And that was pretty consistent across all of us. So next, we're going to look at the limitations that we had within our study.
So we actually had a couple. One of the biggest limitations that we had was finding an app that was usable across everybody's devices. And unfortunately, we couldn't find one. So we kind of decided to, do half, a specific app for Androids and half for the iPhones. And hopefully that kind of balanced out, the differences between the apps and stuff. And then let's see, another big limitation we found was the limited amount of time we had to collect data. In the original study, they had a 90-minute period, which is big, almost, I think, triple what we had. We only had 30 minutes to collect our cell phone usage. So I think that really hampered our data collection. Again, we only had 30 minutes, and I think that's a very, very small amount of time to really get a good grasp and a good overall picture of like our cell phone usage across everybody. And then a third limitation that we had was maybe using frequency. In the original study, they used duration, where they literally measured how long each participant was on their phone for, was specifically Veronica. And we only did frequency, which was instances. So we could have been on our phone for 20 minutes and that would have counted as one. Whereas, I think duration would have shown us a more concise picture and showed us really how long or how much our cell phone usage decreased. But I think overall we did a really good job with replicating it, and we worked with what we had. But those were the three biggest limitations we had in our replication. And then that's our reference for our study, if y'all are interested in reading more in depth about it. And with that, that concludes our presentation. We hope that y'all enjoyed it.